Uh, our last lecture is going to be recorded. Hopefully I have moved to a new apartment over the weekend, and I don't know if I will have internet available, so I'm making this recorded lecture available just in case. And so we're talking about the revisitation of our first lecture, The Past Future of Research Psychology. Yep, there we go. So just to review and go back to the first one, I showed you this tweet here from Saravastia, who said that back in 2021. So 10 years ago, this whole thing started, whatever you want to call it. What are you doing to celebrate the anniversary? And Brian Nosek tweeted this image, and so let's see how's it really going. So just to review, one of the things mentioned in the original tweet was Bem's Feeling the Future experiment. Another were the ethical issues and the very famous Dietrich Staple ethical incident. However, during the time period of 10 years or so ago, 11 years ago, we had several behavioral scientists who were discovered to be actually consciously faking research. John et al. In 2012 published their study on the intentional corners cut in doing research. And we talked about that, the different things that researchers do which could result in false data, false results. Even though the p-value is saying that the probability of a erroneous result is 0.05 or 0.01, and the rest of the reproducibility, apocalypse harking, low power, p-hacking, and publication bias. So to summarize the replication crisis, or the whole mess, we had outright cheating and lying, and we had a lot of researchers engaging in questionable practices regarding research, dirty p-values, p-hacking, etc. What motivates this? And to answer that question, we need to look at the incentive structure for scientists. And I say psychologists, but then corrected it to scientists because it's true for all research scientists. And the key motivation is publish or perish. And this is a cliche, but it's absolutely true. We can say that nowadays it's get grants or perish. That is, to have a professional career in college as a professor, you have to go through a process of gaining tenure. And the final tenure decision is made 7 years after you begin teaching at a college. And in those 7 years, they are expecting that you publish articles, receive grants, teach well, serve on on college committees, and are a leader in the academic field. It's like amazing how they expect researchers or college professors to do everything. And this was not the case. This is something that's changing. I worked with, when I first started teaching, a professor who got a job teaching, a tenure track job teaching, without applying for it. And that happened because they interviewed his friend from graduate school, and then when they offered him the job, he said, well, I just got an offer from Dartmouth, so I'm going to take that. And then the college said, well, can you give us any help about anybody else we could find? And he said, oh yeah, my friend Cliff, why don't you interview him? So Cliff got hired and tenured, and without even applying for the job. And I actually met, for reals, professors who got tenured without even knowing it. This one guy told me that, his department chair called him in one day and said, "Oh, by the way, I put you up for tenure, and you've received it, so congratulations." And he didn't do anything for tenure. He didn't do anything to prepare for tenure or apply for it, and he got it. And that's critically or crazily different than the way it is now. Any of your professors here at York, full-time professors here at York, are berserk during their tenure period. They are getting materials ready to apply to York for tenure. It's a huge packet. Back in my day when I went through tenure, we did it in paper, and so I had a big notebook of all the application materials to get tenure. Nowadays it's done online, but it's still crazy. And again, the requirements for tenure: publish, get grants, and then be a great teacher and serve on a lot of committees. So it's a crazy situation. It's getting more brutal, and that's the situation. And what happens if you don't get tenured? You're fired, or you essentially basically are not rehired. There's a stigma attached with you now, and you're going to be less likely to find another academic job. So not being tenured is a very significant blow to someone's professional career. And this is after you spent a lot of money and a lot of time in graduate school. So it's a major commitment, and it all rides on the payoff of getting tenure. And then, as I mentioned before, replications are less likely to be published. So if you do a replication, people will say you're not adding to our knowledge base. JPSP, the most respected experimental journal in psychology, they don't publish replications because they don't feel it's worth it. It does not add to our knowledge of something. So there are no incentives to replicate studies. And in fact, there are incentives to outright cheat, and also do the thing that John et al., the things John et al. Discovered, the cutting the corners and doing things which increases the likelihood that you are presenting data as real, which is not real. So the incentive structure is very, very focused on publications, and it makes a lot of sense that researchers are going to cut corners, or researchers are going to lie. And as the academic market has gotten more and more cutthroat and more sparse and hard to achieve in, we are seeing more and more of this. So I think the incentive structure is one of the major problems. And it's really led to what a lot of researchers have recognized in the last 10 years or so as a broken system. And so let's talk about the broken system. Screwed. I use that term because a famous psychologist a couple years ago created a wonderful graduate seminar with that title, except the title started with an F. And so I'm saying screwed, basically saying that the system is screwed and psychology is screwed, but the F word instead. So I want to talk about that, and then the results of that, which are the weird studies, which also are part of the incentives for the broken system, and the replication crisis. So screwed. Let's talk about two things that make this situation more difficult and more dangerous for academic researchers: the erosion of full-time academia and academic publishing. What do I mean, the erosion of full-time academia? Uh, that is, researchers, college professors, do not have the jobs available to work full-time. That is, there are just not many jobs for full-time college professors. And if you want to be a researcher, that's what you have to do. Why is that the case? Private colleges are closing. And this has been a trend that started before the pandemic but accelerated during the pandemic. Public colleges are facing massive budget cuts. Again, a trend that started before the pandemic but accelerated during the pandemic. An erosion of the shared governance and tenure system, and the increase in contingent faculty. What is the governance and tenure system? It's a very, very mutually connected system that guarantees college professors the academic freedom to do the research that they want to, but also it allows college professors to have a say in how the college is run or the university is run. And so let me explain or describe both of those individually. Technically, you own York College. York College is a New York City and New York State college. It's owned by citizens of the state and the city, so you own it. The administrators, President Eames and the CUNY Board of Trustees, they are trustees for you or us all. They are holding CUNY in trust for us, and they are making decisions about CUNY based on what they think is the best for us as the public. But legally, the CUNY Board of Trustees and the president of York College, they are in total control of the college. However, historically, over the last 1,000 years, we've learned that universities or colleges that are run entirely by administrators don't work out that well. And so over the last several hundred years, we've developed a shared system of governance of universities and colleges, where even though legally the Board of Trustees and the president are in charge of the college and are the governance of the college, they willingly share this governance with the faculty, with the idea being, if a college is someplace or a university is someplace where we want to have researchers to research and professors to profess, then they should be in charge of the actual running of the institution. And of course, the president of the university is always the boss. They can always fire you. And so how could you have people who could be fired by the president having a share of the governance? And the answer to that was tenure. The idea that after 7 years you are given a tenure decision, either you're tenured or not. If you're not tenured, you're fired. If you are tenured, you are guaranteed a position at the college until you retire. And so tenured faculty like myself cannot be fired. I can say anything I'd like to the president, and the president can't do anything about that. And the idea of tenure is to give the faculty the security in order for them to assert their power and will in shared governance. And the erosion of that is over the last 20 to 30 years, universities and colleges have been doing things to degrade the power or the protection of tenure and to limit the shared governance of faculty and the administrators in governing universities. Gutman, which is a new community college, is, for example, a non-shared governance and non-tenure college. It was designed based on the model that only administrators will run it and make decisions about how to teach students and how to do research. So That is one of the erosions in full-time academia. That is, the protections of tenure are being eroded, and so therefore there's a less powerful voice of faculty members in the shared governance. So decisions are being made about how to teach college, which the college professors themselves are against and see as detrimental to doing research and teaching students. But the administrators feel that this is the best thing to do. I once taught at a college that closed down because the administrators of the college basically ignored the idea of shared governance and ignored the complaints of the faculty. And the faculty said, don't do this or we're going to get into trouble. And the administration ignored the faculty, did it, and 2 years later the college went out of business. That's Antioch College in Ohio, if you want to look it up. And then the other erosion is the reliance on contingent faculty. And these are mainly adjunct professors or adjunct teachers. Many of your professors here at York, on average 70%, are contingent or adjuncts. That is, we hire them class by class, semester by semester. They have no chance at tenure, and they have no security. And they really have no commitment to the college or to the students. They are just trying to, through several low-paying adjunct positions, try to earn enough money to survive. And so many of your adjunct professors are in that situation exactly. They are teaching here and at several other colleges in order to string together low-paying salaries for teaching a course here and there to get enough money to survive. Of course, contingent faculty are fantastic because you can lay them off immediately if you want, like in the next semester. The contracts for adjuncts are only for one semester. So if, for example, the class doesn't fill, you lay the adjunct off. If, for example, the class doesn't fill for next semester, you lay the adjunct off and you don't pay them and you save money. This is not the case when you have tenured faculty. If a class doesn't fill, you still have to pay the tenured faculty member. If the class doesn't fill next semester, you still have to pay the tenured faculty member. This seems to be like the best idea for saving money to the administrators, but it further erodes the idea of shared governance and also places the burden of teaching students to low-paid, distracted, and not well-trained adjunct professors. And I may be saying some negative things about adjunct professors, but I like to say, hate the game, not the player. I was an adjunct once and I understand, and more power to them. But the whole system is being set up to reinforce in adjunct professors a lot of behaviors which are not conducive to educating students. So, for example, this is from 2018. We're looking at institution type. That is R1, the big research institutions like Ohio State. R2, smaller research institutions. R3, like Miami University, where I got my doctor's degree. Master's programs, baccalaureate programs like York. Associates. We look at the proportion of faculty that are tenured, tenure track, that is working to get tenure, full-time but not tenure track, such as in our case, the the lecturers or the doctoral lecturers here at York, part-time, that is adjuncts, and graduate students. And we see that as we go further down from R1 to R3, we see a greater reliance on adjuncts and in master's programs and in baccalaureates, we see a very strong reliance on adjuncts. And as the decades progress, we see these changes in terms of full-time and contingent faculty. So the diamonds are full-time faculty, and as you can see, since 1975, the number of full-time faculty, or the percent of full-time faculty, has significantly dropped. And since 1975, the amount of adjunct professors has shot up. And so the national average, as you can see here, is around 45% nowadays. Here at York, it's 70%. 70% of your instructors are adjuncts. So those systematic or background factors have affected and degraded the stability of college professors and researchers, which has led to their desire to get tenure and the difficulty of getting tenure. Another issue going on is in academic publishing. Academic publishing is, there's no way to put this, a con job, and let me explain why. First off, half of the world's research journals are published by 5 companies: Elsevier, Springer, Taylor and Francis, Wiley and Blackwell, and the American Chemical Society. You probably recognize many of these names as textbook publishers. And they've basically cornered the market. Elsevier's operating profit margin a couple years ago was 36%. Now, if you're a business major or took business, you know that 36% is an unbelievable profit margin. And when you look at the cost that it takes to publish a paper, oftentimes, to publish one paper, these journals will have to expend in terms of cost $3,000 to $4,000. So they're not spending that much money on publishing the papers. They're just basically raking in the cash. One way to show this is looking at, for example, 2009 mean bundle prices. That is, these are the prices that you would pay, a college would pay, York College for example, to get Elsevier's bundle of electronic journals. And this is R1 universities, R2 universities, and master's programs. So the higher the research number R1s, they're going to buy bigger bundles because they're doing a lot of research, and so their researchers need to have a big bundle. And so you have, the price is over $1 million for just Elsevier's journals, for R1 universities, $89,000 for masters, and that is kind of comparable to how much York pays overall for all of our electronic bundles. So these journals are charging a ton of money, but as I said, they're expending very little of it publishing the papers. What they're actually doing is making an unbelievable profit margin. How are they making this profit margin? They don't pay for labor. Because college professors have to publish to get tenure, the college professors, the researchers, are doing the work, and our work is being exploited by Elsevier and Springer and Wiley and Taylor and Francis. I do all the work to get a journal article published in a journal, and they pay me $0. And in fact, in some cases, non-predatory journals will charge you a fee to publish your paper. For example, to cover their cost of a proof, or to cover their cost of publishing supplemental material. So even non-predatory journals, real official journals, will charge researchers money to publish their journals in a paper. So not only are professors not being paid for all the work they do, but they also may have to pay $1,000 or so to get a journal published because of they're covering the costs for the journal, which is ridiculous since they're making so much money. Also, the editors and the peer reviewers for these journals are college professors, and they're not getting paid to be an editor or getting paid to be a peer reviewer. So again, we're doing more work for the journals for absolutely nothing at all, and they're making a ton of money. That has led to some extreme reactions. Often, you'll run into a paywall when you're looking for journal articles, and that's because these publishers here want to make you pay for their journals. They want to make you pay for the articles that they exploited the work of college professors, and they want to make you pay for it. And if you think about it, my salary is being paid by you, by your city and state income tax. And so what that means is anything I produce is being paid for by the state of New York and the city of New York. So who should own that? Well, the city of New York and the state of New York, not Elsevier or Springer. And so this situation is so severe, it's led to some very interesting responses. Alexandria Elbakian, who's right there, is a Russian scientist or graduate student, and she was disgusted with all the paywalls that you would run into trying to do research, and so she created Sci-Hub. And Sci-Hub is a pirate site. It moves around on the internet. It is illegal, and what it does is it provides, for free, all of these research journals, or a lot of research journals that are behind paywalls. I'm not going to tell you how to find it because that changes every so often, and I'm not going to encourage you to use it because unless you know what you're doing, you may end up at a pirate site where all you're going to get is malware and viruses. But this is something that's available. Many researchers use it, and I don't think there's any stigma in using it, because indeed these journals are existing and making money from our work, and our work is being made possible by your state income tax. And so why in the heck shouldn't you get the research that I write for free? Why should you pay Elsevier $34 to look at one of my journals for a couple of hours? It just doesn't make any sense. Another result, and also another kind of cause of the whole situation with faculty being insecure and faculty needing to publish quickly, is the fact that most research is conducted on weird subjects. And in this case, weird means Western, that is American and Western European, educated, industrialized, that is people from industrialized societies, those who are mainly rich, and from democratic societies. And Heinrich Heine and Noren Zayan in 2010 published their seminal article about weird research subjects. It was seminal, but it's been done before, and every 20 years or so, or 15 years or so, if somebody publishes the same article saying that, we're really screwing ourselves over by using these subjects, and then people say, well, yeah, that's a big deal, and then they just keep on doing it. So let me say something about why we use weird subjects. What these weird subjects are subjects from research pools. college research pools. We have the research pool here at York in the psych department, and that's what exactly is going on. Because a lot of research is done in America, and also a lot of research is done at the big R1 institutions, and those R1 institutions are state universities like Ohio State and University of Michigan and University of Minnesota, the land grant colleges. So they're doing research from their research pools also. So those subjects are from Ohio and from the Midwest. They are in a pretty good university situation, so they're well educated. They're from an industrialized country. They are rich enough to go to college, and they're from a democratic country. And so because of our reliance on research pools, we have these weird subjects. Why do we rely on research pools? Research pools are samples of convenience. They're not accurate representative samples of any population. They're just convenient because we can just go downstairs and get some subjects. And the reason why we do that is because it allows us to do research more quickly. If I had to go out and find research subjects myself without being able to go to the York Research Pool, it would significantly slow down the speed and the turnaround time of my research. So again, the weird subject populations are part of the whole replication crisis and part of the whole cause of the replication crisis. Our use of the research pools are caused by the fact that we have to publish fast and publish a lot, publish as many articles as we can in 7 years. And then it adds to the problems with research, because if you conduct a study on a weird set of subjects, that is Americans, you may get some weird results. And this infographic describes what they found in their study about the weird results that you can get. And so they found that from 2003 to 2007, 93% of the studies were tested only on Westerners. Only 7% were from non-Western countries. 68% were from the U.S. And nearly 70% used only samples from 12% of the population. What's the outcome of this? First off, the idea that the biological or the cultural background will cause very significant differences in the findings. And so, for example, in studies that are looking at the ultimatum game, which is a bargaining game, you find significant differences between the results from large Western cultures and from small isolated cultures. And that's because the cultural background affects how people think about the idea of negotiating and giving and taking. And if you just look at popular research and think that this applies to people all over the world, you'd be wrong, because most of the popular research comes from America or Western cultures. Perception is significantly shaped by culture. For example, the rod and frame illusion, which is a very basic illusion, where you are given the chance to rotate this frame, and you're asked to rotate it so that the line is vertical. And Westerners do much better on this because they live in a world where we live in boxes and 90-degree corners. And people who don't live in 90-degree corners have a much more difficult time with this task. The Mueller-Lyer illusion, which is we ask people which is longer, which line is longer. They're both the same. but that illusion persists. And people in Western cultures are more prone to the illusion than people in non-industrialized cultures. The reason why is we live in a world with 90-degree corners. And so this we interpret as a 90-degree corner, and we see this as an internal space, and this we see this as an external space, and we just think about it as a larger space. So from the cultural to the perceptual, we see some very significant differences between people from different cultures. So to review, we have that broken system, which in many parts of it is screwed. Professors and researchers feel pressured to publish. That pressure may cause them to cut corners or to actually cheat. And that results in the replication crisis and the use of weird subjects, which create weird studies and weird results. And just to remind you, the replication crisis, psychology and especially social psychology are at the center of a science-wide crisis. And we're talking about the four horsemen of the reproducibility or the replication crisis. It's not that psychology or social psychology is at the center of it because we're worse than other fields, but we were the first people to recognize this and the first people to do something about this, or the first field to do something about it. So other fields such as medicine, may have replication problems also. They were not as forward-thinking or honest or brave as social psychology was, to look at ourselves and to actually critique ourselves and do the scientific process of on ourselves of critiquing what we're doing and trying to improve it. And so while social psychology and psychology are at the center of this, it's not that we're worse off than other fields in terms of the replication crisis. We first identified it and we're trying to do something about it. One of the first things with the reproducibility project in 2015, this was a large-scale replication process study. The researchers identified 100 studies from 3 different journals, and they got several different labs to conduct close or exact replications. And they went to the lengths of contacting the original study's authors to try to get their original materials to replicate the experiments exactly. They also had open materials and data once they conducted their replications. This was to reduce the likelihood of unknown differences, the unknown differences effect. That is where something that you did not describe in your experimental write-up, your methods section, something that you did not describe, is the key variable that is causing something to be replicated or not replicated. And so in this study, out of 100 studies that were replicated, how many do you think were replicated? About 30. So our replication rate was about 30%. Here's the results of that study. Let's take a look at this table. Down here, or this scatter plot, down here is the original effect size of the original study being replicated. And then here is the effect size of the replication study. And so you go from an effect size of 0 to an effect size of 1, such as you have a Cohen's d. So think about this as a Cohen's d, for example. And this is also a Cohen's d. And so this dotted line here is a effect size of 0 on the replicated study. So anything below here is definitely not replicating it, and in fact, it's showing results in this different direction or the opposite direction. Everything above this dotted line and higher is showing that you have a positive replication in the direction of the original study, and the higher up you go, the greater the effect size in your replicated study. This diagonal line here is going to be where the replicated study has the same effect size as the original study. And you can see that many of the studies are not near this diagonal, and few of them are above it. So in the process of replicating these studies, many did not have the effect size of the original. The majority, if you look at it, and then I have to click this twice to get my pen back. We can look at p-values, and these are the p-values of the replicated studies. And so we look at this study here. The original study found an effect size of 0.5. The replicated study found an effect size of minus 0.45 or something like that. And because with an effect size of minus 0.45, that's certainly not significant, so that's a red dot. And then the green dots are the replicated studies are significant. And then the size of the dot indicates the replicated power, that is the power in the replicated experiment. And the higher the power, the better. And we see several large dots, but also we see smaller dots here indicating that when they replicated this, the power was very low, even though they probably were using a good sample size. And that's one of the things in the project that they did, you have good sample sizes. So that would suggest that the effect is not that strong. And so, as you can see, a whole lot of studies were non-significant, and about a third of the studies were significant. That is, classic psychology and classic social psychology studies, things I lecture about as true or as accepted facts in Social Psychology 232, we've discovered did not replicate. What does that mean? Well, it means exactly that. It didn't replicate. So possibly this effect exists, possibly it does not exist. We don't know until we do further studies. And in fact, researchers after this, after 2015, started to do further studies and series of replications on the same effect to see whether or not it actually exists or not. And we've been finding that some things you can't get to replicate no matter how hard you try. And so some of the things that I teach in social psychology, I don't teach anymore, or actually teach the replication crisis when I talk about that. So one reason why psychology and social psychology is in this fix is because of the fact that we are the first people to realize it, or one of the first, and we're one of the bravest groups to actually confront it head on. And that's one reason. Another reason is this. I found this online in a tweet by a scientist, which is the science in the 21st century. It's a contingency table of whether or not your field has a strong basic theory, no or yes, and whether or not your field has a tradition of controlled experiments. And so astronomy does have a strong basic theory, but they can hardly do any controlled experiments because it's astronomy. You can't recreate the universe as a control. So that's an example of a field that's in the no-yes quadrant. Epidemiology does not have a strong theory, but they don't do controlled experiments. They're mainly case studies. Particle physics does have a very strong theory, and they do controlled experiments. And clinical sciences, including psychology, we do not have a basic theory, a strong basic theory. Is it behaviorism? No. Is it Bandura's social learning theory? No. Is it attribution? No. We don't really have a strong overall theory, but we do experiments. And the author was stating that every science that meets these criteria of doing controlled experiments and not having a strong basic theory, they seem to be in crisis. I think one reason why we're in crisis, another reason, or possibly the reason why all of these are in crisis, is because of alpha levels. And remember, alpha level is what you set before the experiment. And conventional alpha, conventional alpha levels in psychology is 0.05. That's a 1 in 20 chance of being wrong. We have that basically as a compromise. Joseph Bernoulli, who invented the alpha level more or less, and invented much of what we know about probability 400 years ago, he said that an alpha of 0.01 is a moral certainty. And so we are using an alpha level higher than, or more slipshod or more dangerous than a moral certainty. He said that if you wanted to make a decision and it was to have a moral certainty, you'd have to use an alpha level of 0.01. We're doing a much higher alpha level, which means that we're not morally certain about our findings. What about other rubrics that we could use? Physics, who is doing a good job of not having a crisis, they have 3 sigma and 5 sigma. That is to recognize that something is an observation. They say that you have to find data that's more than 3 standard deviations from the mean, and that works out to a p-value of 0.0027 or 0.003, which is again much lower than our 0.05. And then in physics, when they want to say they discovered something, when they discovered gravitational waves, when they discovered the Higgs boson, it was a 5 sigma discovery, and that's a p-level of 0.000006. So those are really small p-levels. Imagine how few positive research results we would have in psychology with a 3 sigma or a 5 sigma standard. But then maybe we wouldn't be having a crisis, because maybe everything would replicate if we held ourselves to those standards. So a solution to this might be higher alpha levels. To get a higher alpha level and find things significant, we have to have higher statistical power. And you have larger sample sizes, or you could have a larger effect size. So you have to have better manipulations, or you have to have lower experimental error. Going back to the reliability of dependent variables, the bare minimum of a reliability estimate is, I said, was a 0.71, because that means that 50% of the number you're getting is error, and the other 50% is trait. And people are happy to report 80% reliabilities, which means that 64% of the number you're getting is the trait, and 64 and 36% is error. A third of the number you got is error, and that's a ton of error. And so psychology, using these really horrible tests that we use, that's one way to say something about these tests, might be one of the causes of the replication crisis. The fact that we have these willy-nilly manipulations might be another reason. In the field that I work in, the defensive attribution theory and looking at sexual assault, we have every different study has a different manipulation for sexual assault. Every different study has a different manipulation for date rape. And we don't even have any standardization there. So, we don't know how well the effect of a manipulation is. We don't know if we could get better manipulations with stronger effects and stronger effect sizes. And we're not doing anything about this. So these are possible reasons why we're having this replication crisis. So let's talk about a better system. What should researchers do? Researchers should basically disclose methods, results, and hypotheses at the beginning and do it publicly. This would require some type of pre-registration of your hypotheses and studies, where you have very specific and publicly registered data collection rules and analytic strategies. That is, I'm going to do a study, and this is my hypothesis, and it's all written down and submitted, and it's at a public repository. This is my exact procedure, and if I'm using a questionnaire, there's the questionnaire, everything. Here are my dependent variables. Here is how I'm going to go about analyzing the results statistically. That is, and everything I've been teaching you about, well, if I have a significant interaction, I'll look for simple main effects or interaction contrasts. I'm only going to do an ANOVA when I have this number of subjects, because I did a power analysis beforehand and I know how many subjects I need to run to get a 95% power level, which is what I want. I'm not going to do anything else of those four horsemen things to kind of cut corners. And then once I'm done, I publish my data publicly on some type of public register of data. And you just have to be a responsible scientist regardless of the outcome. And the Center for Open Science has done that. It started up just a couple of years ago with something they call the Open Science Framework. It was founded to increase the openness, integrity, and reproducibility of scientific research. Brian Nosek and Jeff Spies were instrumental in the forming of it. And it's an open source software platform for pre-registering studies, the hypotheses, the procedures, your data analysis plan, archiving study material, depositing data, and syntax from the software program that you used. And this is the same organization and the same two researchers who initiated the reproducibility project. That is, they wanted to see exactly what was going on with what could be reproduced, and also to improve the checks to make sure that we're doing good, the best science possible, and we're not going to end up in a replication crisis 25 years from now. And I posted links to two videos from Brian about the Center for Open Science that I'd like you to take a look at. And here's some of the pages from it. Pre-registering. What is pre-registering? You simply pre-register. Pre-registration separates hypothesis generating, exploratory, from hypothesis testing, confirmatory research. Most of the research that gets published is confirmatory. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're not just looking at the data and exploring, but we're actually doing hypothesis testing research, and that research is what ends up in the journals. You may see articles with these open science badges. And if you pre-register, if you have open data and if you have open material, you'll get a badge. Do they work? Yeah, they work. A couple studies have shown that it signals quality. The badges signal quality. So therefore many researchers will try to get these badges, and they will very, very explicitly talk about these badges when they go up for tenure, saying that not only is this article I got published, but of course I have these prestigious badges from the Open Science Project. And so how does it work? Well, I'm going to leave that up to you. How would pre-registration handle the four horsemen of the reproducibility crisis? All right, so that's it for today, and that's it for the semester. Thank you very much for sticking through. I know you kind of had to, but a lot of you stuck with me. I know it was a difficult course, and I want to say that I appreciate the students who stuck with the course and stuck with me and worked hard and followed my directions. And I hope that this course helps you graduate, but also helps you understand psychology while you're in York and for the rest of your life. Thank you. Bye-bye.